Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm ShyWizard. I'm going to be continuing here in part 2 of the hose system mod by Wopster and continuing our look at modifying the system to work with something other than just the slurry. So part 1, I set up all the relevant bits and pieces here to work with the Joskin's 30 tank, set up the XML, the mod desk, all the rest of it there, added in the specialization script and all the rest of it. So, and I've just used the Flegel tanker here, the example one that's provided by Wopster, to kind of reproduce that in another mod. Okay. But the stage that I've got to is, even though all of this is set up correctly, it won't be recognized by the actual hose mod by default because I've used a field type category of sprayer. And if I actually go into the hose mod itself here, and I've just extracted the zip out so I can actually open it up and work with it. If we look in all of here, you've got loads of different scripts and whatever else. Don't need to mess about any of that. There's no requirement to start rewriting scripts or whatever else. What we need to do is actually look at our hoses themselves and then make a few changes here. Now it's entirely up to you which way you want to go with this. You might want to actually recreate the hoses and then recategorize them so you actually have one hose which is set up for slurry tanks, one hose which is set up for liquid fertilizer, and so on, and then set it up that way. But that would require quite a lot of adaptation in the mod desk to split them up and separate them so that they have all the correct designations within the store pages and whatever else, because otherwise you won't know when you look at it in store to purchase it which one is compatible with slurry and which one is compatible with liquid fertilizer. So if we open this up, you can see through here what the kind of procedure or the setup for the hose itself is done there. But the part that we're actually looking for is our hose system itself, because going back to part 1, in that particular video we looked at this the field type category or categories, and I set the tanker up under sprayer. So obviously when we look at this hose, it's looking for a supported field type category of slurry tank, so it won't connect to the Joskin's tank that I created or put together for the hose mod, because it won't know what it's looking at, because it's looking for the incorrect category. It's looking for sprayer, it's looking for slurry tank in the hose, but the actual tanker itself won't match because the field type category is sprayer. So what we need to do is add that in by just coming into this section here, putting a space in there and type in sprayer. Now this hose will not only be compatible with field type category of slurry tank, it will also now be compatible with sprayer as well. So we need to come down a bit further and add in our field types. So we can come into here and type in our liquid fertilizer. And now this is for effects and whatever else, so you will need to possibly adapt certain parts, because this is looking for a material type of hose system. So if you actually want the field type of liquid fertilizer to show the correct effect in the hose, you will need to modify the material type hose system, which is just a separate material holder within the unit itself, which is somewhere in amongst here, this one. So you'll need to go into here and adapt that. I'm not going to do that, but if you wanted to do that, you could do. So anyway, we've got all those parts set up in there. There's not too much in here. There's nothing there we need to adjust. All this other stuff here we can leave exactly as it is. There's nothing there that we need to mess about with too much. The only thing we need to really change is the actual supported field type categories, to add in whatever category you've set up your mod under. You don't even need to add in the liquid fertilizer if you don't want to, because it's just an effect node that it's pointing to for the material holder. But I like to add it in there just to say that, you know, it now accepts liquid fertilizer. Okay, so we can go ahead and save that, and then I can shut that one down. And I'll do the same with the other hose as well, the 4-meter one. So if we go into here, open up the XML, and we can add in under our supported field type categories here, sprayer, like so. And again for our field types, put a space and then liquid fertiliser. There we go. So now that's all set up in both of those hoses for the correct field type categories and field types, so I can close all of those down. So I'll just have a quick look at this. If we go into the actual material holder and open this up in Giant's editor, go into the hose system, you can see that we actually have by default liquid manure, digestate and water in there as well, but they all use exactly the same material holder. If I open up the material editing window, you can see even for water, if I come over here, the normal texture is dirt, but it's actually using the slurry shader XML. So, and it's then pointing towards some different, slurry tanker 01 diffuse, and there's a couple of, there's a FX mask 01 diffuse, and I'm pretty sure if you look through these, they all share exactly the same textures. Dirt normal, it's still using the slurry shader XML, and I'm pretty sure all of these are the same FX1 mask and slurry tank 01 diffuse. So they're just duplications of what we've already got for the slurry. So what we can do here, if we wanted to, we can make a duplication of this one and then just name this to liquid fertiliser. We'll take a copy of that, hit tab and lock in the change. Then you can come into here and make your changes appropriate there for your field type, like so. So now this material holder will see liquid fertiliser as a field type, but the actual material you'll get out of it will be slurry. So, you know, you can change that, have a mess around with that, do what you want. But if you wanted to just add in the liquid fertiliser to the material holder, at least that way you won't get an error, because I've linked it in the actual hose XML. It's now going to be looking for this field type in the material holder, so you need to add it into there as well to prevent the system throwing up errors saying it's looking for something it can't find. But all I've done there is just made a duplication of what already exists, because they all share the same textures anyway. So I can go ahead and save that, close that down. Don't need to mess about that anymore. So now what we should have is all of the hose systems set up, working for the Joskins fertiliser tank. So what I'm going to do is go into game and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so if I go into the in-game store here, the actual tanker itself is going to be under sprayers, because that's the category that I've actually set it up, or by default it was actually set up by, because it's using fertiliser as a field type, if you like. Black Sheep Modding set it up with the store category of sprayers, which makes sense because, you know, it's under the same system for liquid fertiliser. So with our changes that we've made, it's now not a field type, it's a field type category, but it still recognises, because I use sprayer as a field type category, our liquid fertiliser as a field type, which is what we want. We don't want it to have a whole list of things that it will potentially accept, but we don't want in there, because I don't want wheat in this or barley or whatever else. All I want is the liquid fertiliser. And because we added in the combination in the specs, it now says that it's hose system compatible. That is one of the linking parts to it, so that's fantastic. So we can go ahead and purchase that. The actual all of the other parts which were originally designated with this mod are still there. They still work. We've not changed any of those parts, so you can still do whatever you want with that. So we'll go and purchase that, and just check that it does actually show up. There's nothing any different other than the fact that it now has hose mod compatibility. So talking about hose mod, we go into this and buy one of our hoses. Now this is obviously still under slurry tanks because that's by default where it's positioned or placed. So like I said earlier on, if you wanted to create your own hoses and then redefine them to be used for fertilizer, then you could do so, and then you could redesignate them so that they actually show up in the sprayer section here, not under the slurry tanks. But you would then have to be a bit careful because obviously you do have the choice of colors, so you'd have to remember that you bought a blue one which works with slurry and you bought a silver one which works with fertilizer or whatever else. So you'd have to be a bit careful, you know, on that side of things, because once you've purchased this, which we will now do, it's just a hose on the ground. At the moment I have no idea what that's compatible with. So for me it was easier to just make this hose compatible with everything that I wanted to work with, other than going down the road of having multiple different hoses and then having to pick up 5 different ones because I have to go through the motions to figure out which one is actually compatible with whichever field type category I'm working with. So we'll pick up the hose here, come around to the rear of the unit, and we get our press mouse button left to attach liquid manure hose. So it still says liquid manure hose, but I'm going to that's fine. It is a liquid manure hose at the end of the day. All I've done is just given it the extra functionality of now working with fertilizer. So what I will do is I'm going to also purchase a tractor here. So I'm just going to get the let's do JCB, that'll be fine. So I'll just get one of these and then I can hook up this like so. Okay, so one thing I've not quite figured out as yet, like with the slurry setup, you can link all the XMLs to a particular path in the map itself, like I did in my original video, and then have connection points within the actual map to work with the slurry. So I've not quite got around to figuring that side of things out yet for other products besides the slurry, but we can just buy a standard pallet here of liquid fertilizer. So let's just grab a couple of these. And then we'll just fill it up exactly the same way as we always would do, just by pressing the R key. So if I bring up the menu here, refill additional tanks, so you just press R like you would anyway, and we fill up, no problem. But obviously at the moment I have no point of connection for this end of the hose, so there's no way for me to really know what that's going to do on that end of things. There are some parts when you connect it up to another unit that is also compatible. In the F1 menu here you will get some additional commands that you can then turn on certain functions of the unit and whatever else, but at the moment obviously we don't have any of those because I'm not connected to anything. If I actually start the tractor up, and because it works with the PTO system through the script, we now have some extra parts in here to do with the change direction of pump with the Z key, turn on additional tank with the B key. So if I press B, it will then turn on and ramp up and do whatever else it's going to do. Can change the direction, so if I change the direction and turn it on, but at the moment, as you can see, it's not doing anything because I'm not connected to anything that is compatible with the hose system under the field type category of sprayer. So what I'm going to do is actually save here. I'll come back out onto the desktop and then we'll look at how to set up our sprayer to be compatible with the hose mod system. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new mod from game, and I'm going to try and find, if I can, what I want is a particular unit. So just going to see if I can actually pick it out in amongst all of these. This is the hardest part, trying to actually see what you're trying to pick out from the list here. What I want to find is this one here, the Stylidia, I don't know how you say it, 460. So I'm going to just create this, which is tow behind trailer unit sprayer. So Karuli, whatever. So save that, and I'm going to close that down. Yeah, whatever. And then I'm just going to go into my documents, FS17 mods folder. We'll drag that out onto the desktop. We need to add in our points exactly the same as what we did in the Joskins setup. So again, if I open this up in the Giants Editor session here, we'll come into the scene graph here. I'm going to create a new transform group, Control X, and I'm going to click on the Viz part of the unit, Control V, put it right at the bottom, so I'm not interfering with any index paths that are linked in the XML. It's always going to be at the bottom here, and I'm just going to call this ref. And then I want 2 positions on this particular unit, because if we look, you can't see them very easily because it's all covered in dirt, but there is, I'm going to say this is a fill point. It might not be, but I'm going to use it as that. So we've got one on this side and one on this side. Now I'm sure that's probably not a fill point, it's probably some sort of handle to turn to take the cover off or something like that. But to try and set it up where it fills from the top here will be a right pain, because of the way the hose system works. It won't angle correctly when you try and connect it up. It will look stupid in my opinion. So I'm just going to use this, whether that's right or wrong, you know, I'm just going to say that it's connecting to there and filling up through that particular hole, whatever. You know, you can create something a little bit different if you want to, but that's the way I'm going to do it on this particular video. At the end of the day, the video is there just to show you what you can do, and then you can take it from there and adapt it to do whatever you want it to do. So, but for me, this is going to work just fine. So I need to create one of my reference points here, and then again one on the other side. So I'm going to create 2 new transform groups, highlight both of those, Control X, and then put them into there like so. And you can call these whatever you want. I'm just going to call these ref as well, and I might just call this one ref 1, that's fine. And then what we can do is point these or put these in the appropriate places. So if I come in, say from this way, so we'll have point 1 on this side, that's fine, and then point 2 on the other side, or point whatever. So you need to come in at a fairly good angle here, so you can get it where you want it to be. So Control B, and we'll just click in the middle there, like so. And remembering that we need to have our blue arrow pointing outwards. So if I rotate this into the correct kind of position, something like that will probably do. And then we can rotate this around so that the blue arrow is pointing outwards. And I'll just set it to -90 on the rotate X, so that the blue arrow is a true value, if you like, of 90 pointing straight out, and then our other value is just the angle that the hose is going to connect up to this particular area. Now it may not look fantastic, but at the end of the day it's going to give me a representation in game that I'm connecting the hose up to the unit itself and filling it with the liquid fertilizer. So we can do exactly the same with the other side here. So I'll take my other reference point and come into somewhere around about here. You need to get relatively close because of the way the interactive function works, the interactive placement tool works. If you don't get close enough, it will see a collision from something else and then place it too far away, so you need to get in relatively close to where you want to put it. So we can set up our angle again, something like that, and then we can rotate this one around so that the blue arrow is pointing upwards. So again, we'll do a -90 on there. So we now have both of our points set up in there, in the actual model itself, the mod in Giants Editor, so I can go ahead and save that. And then we need to obviously set up our XML to point it all in the right places. So if I minimize that one, again we'll go, doesn't matter, we'll use our Joskins one, and we'll just open up the XML for this, scroll to the bottom, and I'm just going to take all of the necessary parts here to do with the host system stuff. So we'll take all of this stuff. So let's do that, and then we'll go into this XML, go to the bottom, somewhere down here will be fine, make a few lines, paste it in, and then we need to just change our reference points. So I don't have any part positions on this particular unit, so I just have 2 connection points, so I'm going to do like so, and then I'm going to take the actual indexes from here. So we'll copy the first one and then just put that into there like so, and then we'll do the same again on that one, and this one here will be 1 on the end. So we can just type that in there like so. So we now have our hose reference points all set up on the mod itself, and if we actually look through this one, we can see that this is fill units, fill type categories, sprayer. So that's going to work out really well for us because that's what we've set our hose up to, and this is where all of the fill type category stuff comes into play. So you're trying to link one thing to something else all the time, and you need to have kind of a point where everything is going to match, and that's what this is. This point here with the fill type categories, that's what's going to match across all 3 parts of this, the original tanker and the Joskins tanker, by changing it from a fill type of liquid fertilizer to a fill type category of sprayer, the hose itself by adding in the fill type category of sprayer, and then this particular unit actually having the fill type category of sprayer by default now links all of those parts together to make them all compatible. Without doing any of that, it gets a little bit complicated and doesn't work properly. Okay, so like we did before in the first setup for the Joskins trailer, I can't leave this as vehicle type sprayer animated because it won't work again. At least in my experience, the actual vehicle type, if you leave it at default with the host systems stuff, it just causes problems and won't link in correctly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change this. Let's call it, not sure what to call it. Let's just take that from there. That'll do. And I'll put that there. And we'll delete that. Don't need that. And we'll do that. So we'll just call it the Corolla sprayer. Whatever that word is. So we'll just do that. And then I need to link that into the actual mod desk itself with the correct specializations. And again, like with the Joskins tanker, I'm not going to include that in the video setting all that because it takes too long to add in or include in the video itself. So I've already got it set up and it works fine, it's functioning, so I'll just show you in the mod desk what I've set up, and then you can just copy that if you want to do the same unit, set up the same sprayer with the hose mod. Okay, so as you can see here, I've just basically set it up, put in my title and description. This is important. If you don't put a title and description, it won't load properly because it doesn't know what it's looking for. I've not included any data as such, but I've just put in the tags so that it gives it something to look at. Otherwise it will cause a problem and it won't load properly, and it will say description not included in the mod or whatever else, and you won't be able to purchase it, or it might not even show up in the store. So I've added all those parts in there, added the support for multiplayer if I wanted it or not, and I've also added the specialization, and I've just copied that over from the example mod or whatever, like we did in the first one. We've got our specialization with the host system script, the additional script, so we'll need to copy that over into this particular mod as well. And then I've set up the actual vehicle types here with the new name from the XML that we set up earlier on, this one here. So we've got the crew sprayer thing there, and I've just basically put that into there with the link to the vehicle lure script, and then I've just set up all the correct specializations that are going to work for this particular mod. So if you want to pause the video there or whatever else you want to do, and just make sure you include all of these specializations within your particular sprayer setup, because otherwise it won't work. And I went through several different ones. Like I said, take one out, put one in, take one out, put one in, and then put one back in that you took out earlier on because something else now doesn't work. It's a bit of a ball ache when you're trying to make something work that was not intended to do a certain thing in the first place, and it's all now, yeah, it gets a little bit confusing. But this seemed to work for me anyway. All of these different specializations in this order and whatever else, it worked. So that's what I'm going to go with. So now that I've set all the mod desk up there, and the XML is, standard, that's just default, but obviously we've changed some parts in the XML, but the actual path here for the store details or store item details is exactly the same as it is default. So there's nothing that you need to mess about there. It's just a case of setting up your title and version, and obviously if you want to put your name in or whatever else, and then adding in the specialization for the host system and the link to the actual host system Lua script, and then setting all the specializations up with the changed name for the vehicle type, and then linking that all in together. So that's that. So we can close all of those down now. Don't need any of that. Okay, before we get into game, I made a couple of small errors. Well, just forgot to do a couple of things. Is more likely accurate. I forgot to copy over the actual script here, which is in the specializations folder. I was showing you all of the parts in here and got lost with all the specializations. But one thing I forgot to do was actually add in the correct specialization script that links it in together. So make sure you do that. Just copy the folder over either from the example one here, which you can download from the mod hub. Just copy over the folder there, or use the same setup that we did with the in the first video for the Joskins trailer here, and just copy over that one instead, whichever one works for you. And the other thing I forgot to do, which I've now done, is add in the combination here in the XML for the host system, because we want to show in our store page that this particular sprayer is compatible with the host system. So make sure you add that into the XML there as well for the unit as well. So we can go ahead and zip this one back up again, put that back in the mod folder, then get into game, and we'll try it all out. Okay, so let's test all this out. We've got our original, or the Joskins tank here with the hose system set up and all working. We know this, at least to the point where the hose will connect and whatever else, and it will clearly accept liquid fertilizer, but that's what it was set up to accept anyway, so that's all fine there. If I go into the store, we'll go to sprayers. You can see we've now got our modded sprayer with all the compatibility systems set up for the hose system. It accepts liquid fertilizer, all that sort of stuff. So we go ahead and purchase this. Actually, what I will do is also get another JCB here because I want to move it around when I get to it. So let's let's just jump into this, I think, and we'll get this moved around. To the correct place we can connect the hose up to. Something like that. So if you actually look in the F1 menu for this, you actually have some different settings in here as well now for change direction of pump from emptying to filling, so we can potentially connect the hose up and then fill from our tanker without having to get out of this and obviously get into the tanker. Whichever way you choose to do it will be entirely up to you. Engine must be running, because as soon as I switch the engine off, all of those additional functions disappear, because it relies on the PTO to make the pump work and everything. So if I jump out of that one, I'll grab the hose and come over, and we now have our connection point here, so I can connect that one up, jump back into here, and if I then press R, we will immediately start to fill from what we've got in our tank here. If I press R again to stop, I can then press Z and then press R again, and we will then empty out what we've got in our fertiliser sprayer back into our tank, which is a really nice function, because sometimes, you know, you want to do that. You want to be able to take, you've got this sprayer for potentially sat in the middle of a field somewhere and it's full up with fertiliser, liquid fertiliser, but you don't want to use that sprayer, you wanted to use something else. Now you have the ability to empty it out of that sprayer back into a tank and then reuse it in something else. So I quite like that function. If I actually switch that one off and jump out of here, I can do exactly the same thing by getting into this particular unit, and we get the same functionality. If I start up the engine here, we have activate pump, so with the R key. So if I do like so, it's going to say pump source is empty, because the fertiliser sprayer is the pump source, and that is indeed empty. If I press Z and then R, it will now be filling up the sprayer, so we're emptying out the tank and filling up the sprayer. And again, I can press R, change the direction, and then press R again, and I will then empty the sprayer out. So you can do it from either way, the way that I've set it up within the XML, and now the pump source is empty, so which is again the sprayer, and it's just working out which is the pump source and which is, you know, the actual part you're filling and emptying. That's the part that can be a little bit confusing, but it, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you just press R. If it's taking it from one and you actually wanted to put it in, just change the direction of the pump and you can go again, and it will be fine. And then I can just disconnect the hose and we're good to go. So we'll do like so, pick the hose up, and I can put it in its park position like so. And just to show that it does work, or to test that it does work I should say, if I actually turn this one around, so we're going to use the other connection point on the opposite side now, which I also set up, so we can bring this around to here like so, and we'll do the same thing again. So you know, imagine we're in the field somewhere and we're going to fill up our unit here, and take the hose, connect it up to this end, and take the hose and connect it up to that end like so. So the way that I've put the 2 points on here, it might depend on, you know, what access you have to this unit in the field. You now have the ability to fill it up from either side, and again I can then jump into this tractor, bring up the F1 menu, and then start to fill. So I go change the direction to the correct way, press R, and we're now filling up from the tank. And again I can do exactly the same thing by jumping into this one and then pressing R to either empty out the fertiliser tank or change the direction of the pump, and whichever way I want to go with the fluid. So if I wanted to fill up the sprayer, I could do that from the tank or from the sprayer. It just depends on which way you want to do it. Potentially, I guess, if you wanted to have only a certain amount of liquid fertiliser in this particular unit, I would be filling it up from this unit, so I could keep an eye on the information here in the bottom right to see what's what and the rest of it. But because I have the game extension mod in, it pops up with the name of what the what fill type I've got in there, so sometimes that can get in the way. But at the end of the day, point being is there are many different ways that you can achieve the same goal in this particular scenario, by either using the pump on the tank or the pump on the sprayer to get your fluid from one point to another. So hopefully that now shines a bit more light on what the hose mod can do. We can now set it up for usage with other liquids besides the slurry and the digestate. Now, I have had it working with the digestate without doing any tweaks at all whatsoever, so you can set it up with digestate, I think, pretty much as default. But the fertilizer, because of the fill type categories, it was looking for a particular fill type category of slurry or slurry tank, and the sprayers have a fill type category of sprayer. The hose itself was not set up by default to accept that as a fill type category, so some modification there was required. I'm ShyWizard, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.